Has the world failed the Rohingya people? 700,000 fled a military crackdown in 2017, but Myanmar's leader Aung San Suu Kyi denies claims of genocide. Why is this one-time champion of human rights defending the army which kept her locked up for years? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Stan Grant. 2 years ago, Myanmar's military launched its crackdown on the Rohingya after attacks on its soldiers by members of the mainly Muslim minority. Now, the UN described what happened next as a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. The army was accused of rape, torture and murder. Villages were burned to the ground. And almost 750,000 Rohingya were forced to flee to neighbouring Bangladesh, where they now live in the world's biggest refugee camp as stateless people. The Gambia wanted Myanmar's military tried for genocide, so it went to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. But Myanmar's head of government and Nobel Peace laureate Aung San Suu Kyi has dismissed the case as, quote, misleading and incomplete. And in court, she took sides with the same army generals who kept her under house arrest for decades.
Can there be genocidal intent on the part of a state that actively investigates, prosecutes, and punishes soldiers and officers who are accused of wrongdoing? Rakhine today suffers an internal armed conflict between the Buddhist Arakan army and Myanmar's defense services. Muslims are not a party to this conflict, but may, like other civilians in the conflict area, be affected by security measures that are in place. We pray the court to refrain from taking any action that might aggravate the ongoing conflict and armed conflict and peace and security in Rakhine.
Well, many Rohingya refugees watched Aung San Suu Kyi deliver her testimony in court. They called her a liar. Stephanie Decker has more from Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh.
These are the people who endured those horrendous atrocities at the hands of Myanmar's military, and these are the people who are being referred to in the case at the International Court of Justice. People here have been calling for justice for a very long time. It's almost 2.5 years since hundreds of thousands fled in just a couple of weeks across the border here into the southeastern part of Bangladesh. But people also want to go home, and that doesn't seem to be the case as if that's going to happen anytime soon. There are huge challenges ahead. Yes, hugely significant that you had Aung San Suu Kyi answer questions or answer allegations of genocidal intent at the court. But many people will say that this is not going to address the immediate issues of when and how these people are going to go back to be repatriated. We were speaking to the head of the UN Refugee Agency of Bangladesh, and he was telling us that even if repatriation started tomorrow, it would take an incredibly long time to process the sheer amount of people here. This is the equivalent to some of the capital cities of the world, yet this is a refugee city built on tragedy and trauma. Stephanie Decker, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Well, let's bring in our guest now by Skype from The Hague, Brad Adams, Executive Director of the Asia Division at Human Rights Watch. In London, Kyor Win, Executive Director at Burma Human Rights Network. And from Manila on Skype, Priya Pillai, an international lawyer and head of the Asia Justice Coalition. Welcome to all of you. And Brad, you're there at The Hague. It must be an extraordinary thing. I mean, we're talking about someone here who had been compared to Nelson Mandela. To see her now in court defending the very generals who'd locked her up and arguing that this is not genocide in the face of the evidence that the UN has presented. What was going through your mind?
Well, I was very sad because we worked very hard for Aung San Suu Kyi to be released, to be allowed to participate in political life in Burma. We thought that she would be a leader on human rights and democracy, that she would free all political prisoners, and that she would do her best to keep the army in check. And then if things went wrong, as they have when the military engaged in offensives like this, that she would speak out and she would use her moral capital with the Burmese people and the international community to try to prevent atrocities. And As we all know, she's stayed silent. She's refused to use the word Rohingya. And she has basically apologized and given alibis to the military. And then she stood up in court yesterday and pretended that Burma's military justice system would hold people accountable, which she knows is a lie. She didn't use the word Rohingya. She failed to mention the sexual violence and rape that happened. And she basically came across as a diminished and shallow figure who actually was trembling at times because I'm not so sure she's ever heard this full and complete account in her presence because she has been surrounded by yes people and sycophants since she's been in power.
Kyo Win, is this the way you see it, that perhaps the full extent of this was unknown to Aung San Suu Kyi, or are we seeing someone here defending her country? There's an election coming next year. Some of the actions against the Rohingya play very well with the Burmese people. And she's a nationalist defending the very country that she represents. Is that how you see it?
Well, thank you very much for involving here. In our view, is she's not defending the country because the country has never been the threat, like over external power or anyone. But the most importantly, what she's doing is she is defending the murderer, mass murderer, genocider general, the criminals. So she's putting all her weight, power to defend those generals because it's only one goal is her to remain into the power, her party to get into the power. And on the other hand, inside Burma, what she's doing now is she's now using populism card and promoting, that the Muslims are threatening the nation interest. So she has to defend that. So, I mean, she's now putting the whole Muslim population in Burma in a very great danger. This is what our extreme concern now.
Well, let's be clear, Kyo. This is what she says. Now, she says that she concedes that there may be disproportionate force used by the military, but she is establishing this and setting this up as a security operation. It is about sovereignty. She's talked about counter-terrorism. And yes, she says that civilians in the area may get caught up in this, but clearly this is a military operation in her mind.
So the key point here is the military operation, okay? And that she's trying to change the narrative here is security operation or terrorist operation, which is totally false. Let me tell you why. Before, our organization has been monitoring on the Rohingya and Rakhine State a long time now. I mean, we can tell you that way before the violence happened in Rakhine State, the military operation happened in Rakhine State, there are a couple of few months ahead, we noticed that there are community meetings and in Rakhine State, in many monasteries, has been conducted by the ultra-nationalists, and also the very controversial figure, Buddhist monk, Wirathu, Burmese Bin Laden. He visited multiple trips to Rakhine State, and which is trigger our attention why he has been traveling that much to Rakhine State. And also there is also incidences of the mask covering some black mask people. They are committing murders and killing people. And Burmese government, without any evidence, they are complaining. They are claiming that this is ARSA. Actually, no one has any evidence to claim that who is these people. And they also, we check that. We also follow the patterns. What we find is these are there are some cases, the robbing cases also happen, and some family dispute things happen. There are many reasons behind these black mass murderers, and this is not just ARSA. They are just blaming. In a way that they exaggerated the image of ARSA as a big arms group, which is not, totally false. And then before a few weeks ahead, a couple of weeks, I mean, it is nearly a month, the large number of military has been relocated to Rakhine State. And one of the significant points here is the army which relocated is a very notorious battalion 33 and 99. And they has been relocated to Rakhine State before anything happened, any gunfire, anything happened. So that means this is a very clear evidence that this is a well-planned genocide. And let me elaborate one important point here.
Could you just hold that thought? Just hold that thought, because I want to come back to you. But I do want to, what you raised there, that question that in your mind, this is a very clear case of genocide. I want to go to Priya Pillai on that, because Priya, you are an international lawyer. And one of the things that Aung San Suu Kyi has said very clearly is that there is no intent of genocide. That word intent is really critical here, because to prove genocide, you need to prove the intent to carry that out, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening. Thank you for having me. Well, actually, the one thing I will, backtrack a little bit, because at this point, the hearings right now are really not about establishing beyond a doubt that genocide did or did not occur. At this point, it's really a preliminary stage, which, in order for the court to issue what are called protective measures, the court merely has to be satisfied that there is a possibility, there's a plausibility of genocide having been committed. So, it's watching Aung San Suu Kyi yesterday and watching the Myanmar team's arguments yesterday. I think it's been a bit of overreach on their part, where they have gone to the extent of absolute denial. And they've basically said, there was no specific intent for genocide. At this point, the court does not need to go that far. The court essentially just needs to be, appreciate the facts and to have the idea that there is the possibility of these rights being violated, and that is sufficient at this stage.
Okay, Priya, well, let's establish what we're talking about when we talk about genocide. Now, this is from 1948, the definition of genocide under the UN Convention: the deliberate and systematic destruction in whole or in part of an ethnic, racial, religious or national group. From what you have seen, there's a 444-page report from the UN that line by line talks about rape and torture and mass killings. Does it meet that 1948 definition based on the evidence that you have seen, the reports from the UN and what we've heard thus far?
I think all indications would be yes. And if you look at the fact-finding mission report, and especially the September 2019 report that they've come out with, essentially they've listed 7 factors and, all sort of hallmarks or indicators of genocide. And they have clearly said that there is a clear inference that can be made of genocidal acts. So, it's the other question is whether you need it determined by a court or not. And again, that's the reason why this case is at the ICC. That is a question that is going to come up in the merits phase of the case, and it's up for determination in this court.
Brad Adams, there have been other cases, of course, in recent memory where allegations of genocide have been put. Most notably, you look at Bosnia, you look at Rwanda. When you look and hear at what is happening in Myanmar, how does that compare to other cases?
Well, the Gambia legal team put into evidence today statements by the commander-in-chief of the Burmese military, Min Aung Hlaing, where he talked essentially about a final solution. He said, we're going to solve this Bengali problem once and for all. Bengali referring here to the Rohingya, because they don't call them Rohingya, they deny they even exist. And he said that before the August 25 offensive that led to all this violence and the fleeing of 750,000 people to Bangladesh. And there's many more statements like this. And we have the contemporaneous statements of Aung San Suu Kyi on her website, calling the allegations of rape fake rape, calling the allegations of abuses false news, fake news. So, as many people have said, this is the worst exodus since Rwanda in 1994. These are some of the worst crimes we've seen in the last 2 decades. I don't want to compare them directly because every situation is different and the evidence in each case is different. But the fact-finding mission did lay out these hallmarks of genocide, and the Gambian defense team, the Gambian lawyers went through them step by step today and made a very convincing and persuasive case. On the facts, it's very hard to see what Myanmar can say because the facts are so bad for them. And what I expect is this afternoon they're simply going to make legalese arguments to try to convince the judges that the case shouldn't be in the court in the first place.
Kyo Win, here's some defence, if you like, I've heard from others when it comes to Aung San Suu Kyi, and it goes like this. She is not, in fact, the leader of the country. She may be the de facto leader, but not in fact. She doesn't have control of the military under the Constitution, that she was limited in what she could do. That's why she didn't speak out. That's why she was unable to stop what was happening. Do you buy those arguments?
Look, what she did, well, let me tell you that in 2015 election, she asked her Muslim members not to stand up in the election. And that clearly gives the military a green light that she will never stand up for the Muslim. So this is after 2015 election. What military has read from her is they can go further with their strategy to eliminate the Rohingya community from northern Rakhine state. And they did it. And like you see that throughout all these years, since 2012, you can see until today, she never said a single word to condemn what's going on or to stop what's the human rights violations going on in northern Rakhine. But she's with the side with the military, and she's denying. And look, genocide is not a one thing. One time and something happened. No, this is continuously happening something, and many years. If you go back to 1978, and from that time and 1991, the situation is severe, and restrictions started from 1991. And Rohingyas are not allowed to travel from one village to another. So these are the happenings since long ago, and she's well aware of this. And she denying, and not only she's siding with the military now. And this is clear evidence that she's not defending the genocidal generals in the international court.
Priya Pillai, let's turn to the international community. We just heard from Cure there. This has been something that has unfolded for a long time. There have always been ethnic tensions inside Myanmar, and there have been a range of conflicts among various ethnic groups inside Myanmar. But when it comes to the Rohingya, Priya, is the international community guilty as well, culpable here, in turning away, not applying the pressure, not caring effectively enough to do anything?
I think, that is an argument that has been made. But to be honest, I would say the fact that this case is going ahead is an indication that
eventually though, yes, it's been brought by the Gambia, but there have been many times when other leaders have excused what has been happening, excused Aung San Suu Kyi, not applied direct pressure when direct pressure could have been applied.
Absolutely. And I think, the international community does need to sort of get its act together and step up and be more forceful in pushing back, including on the narrative, which was very clearly put forward yesterday by Aung San Suu Kyi at the International Court of Justice, essentially saying, these are terrorist activities. There is a counterinsurgency effort ongoing. And she was at great pains to really detail the Burmese language version of clearance operations and how that essentially refers to counterinsurgency. And I think, as long as there is tolerance for that argument, that is definitely problematic. And I think that this is, the logical end of where these arguments lead, where you have civilians who are targeted and civilians who are put at risk. As, the Gambia Council said yesterday during the hearings, nobody is refuting the right of a state to defend itself in such situations. But there is a limit in terms of what you can do. Civilians are to be protected, and that does not give carte blanche to states to conduct operations such as this, which results in the displacement of nearly 1 million civilians. So, there are a few undeniable facts on the ground as well. And yes, I absolutely agree. States do need to step up a bit more. In this case, the Gambia has stepped up and has put forward a strong case before the International Court of Justice on behalf of the international community as well, I would say, as well as on behalf of itself, given that it is a signatory to the Genocide Convention. So I think you finally have, a few states that are beginning to step up as well. And one would hope that legal action such as this, as well as before the International Criminal Court, which has just been given the green light in November, as well as the universal jurisdiction case in Argentina, are all going to sort of build the pressure on states as well to, to essentially talk to Myanmar, whether they're states that have good relations or not, and put some more pressure on Myanmar.
Brad, I'll bring you in on this as well. The United States is now applying sanctions to some of the military leadership. But you would expect more, wouldn't you? More than just applying sanctions to particular individuals, more than just pushing back against the narrative, as Priya has said here. But what would you expect from the international community directly in this case to sanction or censure Myanmar, but also to provide protection and security guarantees for Rohingya to be able to return if they wish?
Look, in August 2017, we saw mass crimes being committed, and yet the Security Council of the United Nations did not meet. We have not had a resolution at the Security Council. We have had a hard time even having informal meetings at the Security Council. After Rwanda, the world said never again, which they had said many, many times. It happened again, and they took no action. We've had diplomats inside Burma really conducting business as usual. Imagine after the Hutu massacre of the Tutsis in Rwanda, if governments had said, well, this is a problem of a certain community, but we still have to deal with the leadership in the country, and we're going to send trade missions, we're going to send aid missions in, we're going to talk to them about development in other parts of the country. We're going to work with them slowly because, you know, the situation is really difficult for those Hutus. We have to be really careful not to make the situation worse. And that's exactly what's happened in Myanmar since 2017. It's really been shocking how little the world has done. And, you know, I'm heartened by Gambia taking this step, and the Netherlands and Canada have expressed some interest in joining. But where are all these countries that always talked about human rights in Burma for the last decades? Why haven't they joined this case? Why aren't they knocking on the door of the Security Council every day of the week? You know, why aren't they embargoing the country in ways that would hurt the military? Why aren't they, you know, why were sanctions by the U.S. just issued this week? Why weren't they issued a year ago, 18 months ago? And actually, why weren't they issued before all this was? Why wasn't all this done before 2017? Because we saw this kind of violence in 2012 twice. We saw it in 2016. You know, we all could see this coming, and actually, we can still see it coming. We've had some, you know, quiet in the last 18 months in terms of military operations against the Rohingya in Burma, but this will happen again. The military has made it clear that their goal is to push every Rohingya out of the country.
So where does this leave the Rohingya cure? I mean, we're looking at the refugee camps that they're crowded into now, the biggest in the world, the size of small cities, middle-sized cities in some cases. Where does it leave the Rohingya? Who will take refugees? What's the potential for them to be able to return, given the situation inside Myanmar right now? And what more can the international community do to protect them and to provide safe haven?
One of the here is you see what Burmese government has done is now they put one very big obstacle, which is nationality verification card. In order to repatriate, Rohingya has to buy that. Rohingya has to agree with it. And what does that mean is, that means Rohingyas are foreigners, Rohingyas exist, they are only Bengalis, and they have to sign that card. And if the holder of this card has to apply as a foreigner, whenever they want to travel, they have to fill up a form number 4 and they have to apply for it. So they will never go back to in this condition, because they belongs to this land. They are the native people of that land. How could they be treated as a foreigner? It's impossible. And the second thing is, there is no security for the people who return, because you see there is still nobody want to return to the open prison. That is the important thing. There is no healthcare, there is no education, there is no employment. Look, people are, until today, they have been restricted. You see there are 3 cases within this couple of months in Irrawaddy town division. There are 96 people, one group, 24 people, 22 people, one group, 34 people, one group. That group of people, Rohingya, has been escaping from Burma to go to Malaysia, Thailand, and they've been stuck in Burma. And they've been now put to the jail. You know, the jail term for this legal remedy here, they could be given a very light punishment, but they're giving 2 years hard labor jail. So that means the Burmese authorities now want to keep them in open prison like a hell. And those who are running away, they're being punished severely. So there isn't any hope or any possibility to return these people to Burma anymore.
Thank you. I just want to give the final word here as well to Priya. Priya, it's been said as well that the International Court of Justice and the international community is on trial here as well in The Hague. Where does it go to from here?
Well, you know, as the counsel for the Gambia said very clearly, sort of putting the court on the spot, that the eyes of the world are on you. And that is very true. I mean, at this point, for these provisional measures, there's a threshold that I feel Gambia has met. And it would be quite shocking indeed if the International Court of Justice didn't pass a positive order. But in terms of the next steps, you know, this is really the first step of what is a very long and unfortunately quite tedious and lengthy process. So after this, there'll be a series of other steps within the framework of the court and the legal hearings. And, you know, there's a chance that the case may not make it right through to the merit stage. So that's something that I think, in terms of being realistic about what this case is about and what it can do as well. And just to, you know, draw on the point of reparations, and the Gambia has also asked very clearly that at the end of this case, for safe, voluntary, dignified repatriation with full citizenship rights. But again, I mean, we'll have to see how the case moves ahead and you know, what eventually occurs with these rulings.
Thank you all for joining us on the program today. Thanks to our guests, Brad Adams, Kyor Win and Priya Pillai. Nice to speak to you. And thank you so much for watching as well. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Stan Grant, and the whole team here. Bye for now.